On December 10, 2021, a massive tornado tore through Edwardsville, Illinois. It slammed into an Amazon warehouse, peeling the roof back like a tin can and collapsing a concrete wall the length of a football field. 6 people were killed. And in the middle of all that rubble, a single, huge question emerged, one we're still trying to answer today. Was this just a random, tragic act of nature, or was it a disaster that could have and should have been prevented?
So to really unpack all of this, here's how we're going to do it. We'll start with the storm itself, what the warnings looked like and what was happening on the ground. Then we'll move from the physical collapse to the fallout, digging into the search for accountability in this intense algorithm-driven work culture that hangs over everything. And finally, we'll look at the new laws this tragedy inspired and ask that one big question. Has anything really changed at all?
All right, so to understand what went so wrong that night, you have to know one crucial thing. This storm did not come out of nowhere, not even close. For hours, even days, meteorologists were sounding the alarm, and the warnings just kept getting louder and more specific.
So check out this timeline. The day before, the National Weather Service is already saying, hey, severe weather is coming. Then, on the day of the collapse, at 5:20 p.m., a tornado watch is issued. That means conditions are perfect for a tornado. Less than 2 hours later, they're tracking a specific supercell, a monster of a storm, and it's heading right for the area. Then, at 8:06 p.m., it's no longer a watch. It's a warning for Edwardsville. That means a tornado is either on the ground or about to be. It's not a possibility anymore. It's happening.
And this is where the story pivots. It stops being just about the weather and becomes about people and decisions. While all those official warnings are blaring outside, this is the reality for some people inside. This text message was sent by Larry Virden, one of the workers, just 16 minutes before he was killed. It's absolutely chilling, and it gets right to the heart of the whole controversy. This feeling among workers that they just weren't allowed to leave, even with a deadly storm closing in.
So the tornado hits, and the damage is just immense. But what investigators found when they started sifting through the wreckage, it wasn't just about the storm. They uncovered this whole chain reaction of failures, human error, broken procedures, that really turned a dangerous situation into a fatal one.
We're talking about a serious storm here, an EF3, with winds cranking up to 150 miles per hour. It just plowed into the side of the building, and a massive section of wall came crashing down. The roof was torn right off. And keep in mind, this building wasn't old at all. So the big question for investigators became, okay, the storm was powerful, for sure. But was this building and its emergency plan ready for it? Should it have been?
An OSHA investigation later found this just unbelievable sequence of events. So management gets the tornado warning on a web app. Good start. But the megaphone they're supposed to use to alert the whole warehouse reportedly locked up in a cage and nobody could get to it. So managers start running around telling people by word of mouth to shelter in the restroom. Just the restroom. But which one? The designated safe spot was the northern one. In the chaos, a group of about 10 people went to the southern bathroom instead, the very same side of the building that took the direct hit.
And you know, this chain of failures had a real tragic human cost. 6 people lost their lives that night. They were drivers, maintenance workers, dispatchers, people with families and lives ranging from 26 years old to 62. Most of them were contractors just brought in for the busy holiday season, and all 6 were in that southern bathroom when the wall came down on top of them.
So as the search and rescue teams are doing their work in the wreckage, the public conversation starts to change. People are looking at the rubble and asking, wait a minute, yeah, a tornado did this, but was that the only reason people died? The focus starts shifting from a natural disaster to a question of corporate responsibility. The search for survivors slowly becomes a search for answers and for accountability.
And this moment, wow, this really poured fuel on the fire. You have to picture this. The day after the collapse, rescuers are still digging through the debris in Illinois. Families are waiting for any news. And at the same time, in Texas, Amazon's founder, Jeff Bezos, is celebrating a successful space launch. He's posting these happy photos online. It was hours before he even publicly acknowledged the deaths in Edwardsville. And for a lot of people, the optics of that, it just looked awful, like a massive disconnect between the top of the company and the people actually doing the work. That public anger pretty quickly turned into legal action. The families of the victims sued, and the allegations in those lawsuits are just staggering. They're not just saying there wasn't a good emergency plan. They're alleging the building itself was flawed. Get this, that some support columns were held in place with caulk instead of being properly bolted or welded. And they hit on that key point from Larry Virden's text that workers were effectively forced to keep working.
all because of the pressure to meet performance targets. So that brings up a really important question, right? Why would anyone feel like they couldn't just leave, even with the tornado warning going off? To get that, we have to pull the lens back and look at the whole system inside these Amazon warehouses. It's a world where the pressure to perform is constant. And a lot of the time, your boss, well, it isn't a person. It's an algorithm that's watching every single move you make. Yeah, there's a name for this system: digital Taylorism. Think of it like the old factory assembly line, but supercharged by technology. Every single job is broken down into tiny, measurable tasks. The system is tracking you constantly, your time on task versus your time off task. And here's the real kicker. The algorithm finds the fastest worker and then uses their pace to set the performance quota for everybody else. So the bar is just constantly, automatically getting higher and higher. And you can see the effect of that pressure in the safety numbers. According to an analysis of OSHA data, Amazon employs about a third of all warehouse workers in the US, but their facilities account for over half of all serious injuries in the entire industry. Let that sink in for a second. A third of the workers, more than half of the injuries. Critics say that's no coincidence, that there's a straight line from that intense algorithmic pace of work to these high injury rates.
What happened in Edwardsville was so shocking that it did more than just spark lawsuits. It was a catalyst. Lawmakers in several states started looking at this and said, you know what, the real problem here might be these relentless algorithm-driven quotas, and they decided it was time to actually try and rein in the algorithmic boss.
So you started to see these warehouse quota laws pop up, first in California, then in places like New York and Minnesota. And they're aimed directly at these kinds of systems. They basically say companies have to give workers a written explanation of any quota they're facing. And more importantly, they make it illegal for a quota to be so demanding that it stops a worker from taking their legally required breaks for meals, rest, or even just using the bathroom. It's an attempt to put a legal firewall between productivity targets and basic human needs.
And what's really interesting is that this isn't the only way to tackle this. In Poland, regulators took a totally different approach. They don't focus on quotas, they regulate energy expenditure. I'm not kidding, they literally have a legal limit on how many calories a worker can burn in a single shift. And when inspectors went into Polish Amazon warehouses, they found workers burning more than double the legal daily limit. That's like doing 2 days of hard physical labor in one shift.
And these new laws are having a real impact. In mid-2024, California's labor commissioner cited Amazon for almost 60,000 violations of their quota law. And that was at just 2 warehouses over a 5-month period. The state said the company failed to give workers written notice of the quotas they were under. It shows you not only that the new regulations have teeth, but also the sheer scale of the practices they're trying to address.
All of this brings us full circle, right back to the site of the tragedy in Edwardsville, Illinois. Almost 3 years after the tornado, a rebuilt DLI-4 warehouse reopened. So after all the lawsuits, the investigations, the new laws, we have to ask the ultimate question. Are the workers inside that building any safer today?
Well, on the surface, there's been some progress. The original warehouse was built to a code that required it to withstand 90-mile-per-hour winds. The new, rebuilt facility was constructed under a more recent code, which mandates that the walls can withstand winds up to 114 miles per hour. So, without a doubt, it is a stronger, more resilient building. But here is the final, crucial point that leaves you with this deeply unsettling question. Despite a tornado killing 6 people because they couldn't get to a safe shelter, the brand new, rebuilt DLI-4 warehouse was constructed without a dedicated storm shelter, and neither were any of the other buildings in that business park. So yes, it's built to a stronger code. But in a region known for violent tornadoes, after everything that happened, how is it possible that a building full of workers still doesn't have a purpose-built place to take cover?